Good afternoon and welcome to Team Training Tuesday, our afternoon webinar session. Today's afternoon session is selling the wow. You know, we've had quite a few webinars that have taught you how to create some really beautiful and fantastic corsages and boutonnieres and floral accessories. Well, today we're going to take it up a notch and show you how to add some real pizzazz and bling to your fashion floral jewelry. So we're going to go ahead and get started here, but before we do, I just want to make sure that all our attendees can hear me and see me. If you're having any technical difficulties whatsoever, there's a little box there that you can actually write your questions or comments in, and go ahead and let Ashley know in our home office that you're having some difficulties, and we'll get you before we get started. We want to make sure that everybody can follow along, so go ahead and do that. I'll just take a quick break here, and if we don't have any questions coming through, looks like everybody is on board and we're ready to go. Okay, well, like I said, we're doing Selling the Wow today, and we are going to have two projects. We're going to have a corsage and a boutonniere, and then I'm going to show you some samples of some of the other items that you should be including in your prom sales. If you've joined us, if you've ever attended one of our programs or workshops, you know that we always say you should be selling 3 items: a corsage, a boutonniere, and something else. That right there sets you apart from your competition and says that you really know what's going on in prom trends and fashion. Because you know what? Flowers are an accessory to the dress, just like the purse, just like her hairdo, just like the shoes, and the rest of her jewelry. Flowers are meant to be an accessory to her outfit that day. And we want to show you a whole bunch of great ideas of how you can add those sales into you instead of having them go somewhere else. We want those cash registers ringing for you. So our first project is a corsage, and at first glance it looks just like a typical corsage, and it's actually done on our Athena armband, which is meant to be worn high up on the arm. So from the back view you can see that there's, it's split here so that it can be adjusted to fit any size arm. But what makes this wow, takes this over the top, is that we've actually added a second corsage to it. So she'll be wearing something high on her arm and then also at her wrist. Talk about wow. She'll certainly make a big impact when she walks into the prom with beautiful chains and sparkles dangling from her arms and bling on her wrist. So for this project, you should have the following items. If you're following along with us, you should have a bracelet of your choice. We have selected the Color Your World bracelet. It's fairly new to our line and is available in a lot of different colors. You should also have the armband, the Athena armband. Excuse the rumbling of the cellophane. There's the armband. Remember how I said earlier how it's adjustable. So there is some flexibility for the wearer in the size. It can be made smaller or bigger to adjust to just about anybody's arm. You should have some of the Dazzle-Line chain. A beautiful rhinestone chain. Just as a great accessory to just about anything that we add it to. We've got some of our Infinity. This happens to be Infinity Plus. It is available in 2 sizes. This is the larger of the size. It's like a rhinestone orb. It kind of reminds me of the ball that drops down on New Year's Eve in New York City. We also should have some accent sprays. This is the Celebration, which is the round. And some of our rose leaves. Okay, now that we have everything out and ready to go, now I want you to keep a few of these cellophane bags because they come in really handy when we need to clean off the tip of our floral adhesive. We know that gets a little bit, messed up, and it accumulates, and it gets a little bit messy there at the top. So the cellophane bags that our products come in are a great way to clean off that. So we always say keep a few. And I want to apologize. I've got a bit of a cold, so I sound a little nasally and stuffed up. I hope you can hear me and understand me, but excuse my sniffles. I'm going to make it through this. We're troopers, we're florists, and we're tough. Okay, and then we have, I don't know if I said this, but if not, we have one of our delicious jewels. And you know what, that one is Parfait. It's a crescent shape. I love this one. It has the pearl in the center. And it has the pin on the back. So those are the materials we need for our corsage. And so I'm going to kind of move some of my stuff out of the way. So I have a nice clean workspace. And I'm going to lower my camera so you can actually see what we're doing up close. Here we go. Okay. And if any time during the process you have any questions, please, please, please go ahead and type those in. We've got both Ashley and Dan sitting behind the scenes ready to break in if they need to ask a question so we can make sure it gets answered, or they might hold it till a little bit later and then we'll answer them all at once. But we want to make sure that you have your questions answered. It's important that you understand what's going on and what you need to do. So, there's no such thing as a stupid question. All questions are good and positive, and chances are there's somebody else out there who wants to know that same answer. So start off with our 2 bracelets. The Color Your World actually has our ultimate disc clip. It's something that's new to our line that we've added, and it's been the response has been just really overwhelming to the disc clip. There are still people who like to wire and tape their corsage, so this allows them that more traditional method of wiring and taping, and then securing it on just like we have been doing. But it also allows for a little bit larger of a design base if we're not going to do that. So in this case, we are going to be gluing, so we don't need to have the full clip. So we're just going to go ahead and bend over the little wings, and flatten them out, get them out of the way. Now at this point, there are some people who like to go ahead and tape that over with a little bit of corsage tape, just to kind of, the edges are not rough or sharp in any way, but if you like that more clean and finished look, certainly you can take a little tape or even a little ribbon and wrap it around the disc at this point. I'm not going to do that just for the sake of time, and I want you to be able to see how this all works in with the corsage during construction. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it just like this. And I'm also going to take my little ribbon rosette. This ribbon rosette serves several purposes on our corsages. One of it is obviously to hold our design disc, which is a little plastic disc that you're all familiar with, onto the bracelet itself. But it's also meant to as a mechanic. This is another way that you can use to tie on a wired and taped corsage. You would just create your wired and taped corsage like you normally would. Go ahead and lay it over the disc and then just tie, I'm using the streamers here, tie it right onto the corsage base, and then it's secured on there. I also like to use them as a way to secure my ribbon. So the first thing I do on all my corsages whenever I have them is I want to make sure that this is tied very securely. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, so it's always good to get in the habit of double checking and tying that extra tight knot in there. Now I know that this is not coming loose, it is on there securely. I'm just going to set that aside, and I'm going to do the same thing to my Athena armband here. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the streamers and make sure that it's tied securely on there. And depending on the bracelet and how it's constructed, like you can see, this one isn't tied in the center. The other one was tied directly in the center. This is both tied here and here and here. But I'm going to go ahead and, again, just make sure it's secured, and I'm going to go tie it one more time, bring those together, pull them really tight, tie a nice knot in there. Now I know my design disc is not going to wobble. Okay, next thing we want to do for this then is we're going to make our bows. And our bows, it's a way to bring a little color and a little texture and a little accent into the corsage. But really, in this case, in the sample here I made, it's made more of a mechanic. I want something to be able to glue my flowers and my accessories into, and ribbon is a perfect thing to do that with. It's a porous material, so the glue will adhere quickly to it and securely to it. So here it's just, we see a little bit of it, but it's really meant as a mechanic first and an accessory second. So I'm going to go ahead, and I don't have to make really large bows for these. A lot of times you've seen us use where we've really exaggerated the ribbon, or we have left long streamers. This time we're not going to do that. We're gonna have other things for streamers. As far as how many loops per bow, that's really your personal preference. You know, always you should be pricing out how many yards you use. I hope that you're just not making bows randomly, and that you're not watching your cost and your product use. It's really, we can become very wasteful in our creative ventures. We just get so into the moment that we forget to count our pennies, and we need to be able to do both. We need to be able to be creative and count our pennies. So, you know, figure out what you're going to do, measure it out on their first one, so then you'll know I need 3 yards of ribbon, measure off 3 yards, then make your bow. Whatever it is you want to do. I'm not taking the time to measure it just for the sake of our webinar today, but excuse me, you know, it's really your choice in how fluffy and how much you want to use for your bows. So I have one for there. Excuse me. I'm going to make it through this, I promise. I'm going to have one more bow. And there's just so many wonderful ribbons out there. I love the ribbon that's double-sided, because that way I don't have to worry too much about that whole pinch and twist, because I know whatever side is going to be out there is going to be pretty, and it's going to look finished. And you notice I like to use a piece of ribbon to tie off my bow. I just feel I need some kind of a mechanic, and to me a wire gets in the way, but I know a lot of you like to use wire, and that's perfectly okay. Whatever works for you that gives you the finished product is what's important. But I use the ribbon because now my mechanic also becomes part of the accent, because it's another piece of ribbon tying it off. So now that we have those, I'm going to go ahead, using the ribbon streamers from the rosette, I'm going to tie my bow onto my base. You can use one from either side, or you can use them both. And quite honestly, when I first started doing this, it was I felt a little like I was all thumbs, but once you do it a few times, you get the hang of it, and it becomes very simple and quick and easy. And you can pull that really nice and tight, so you know that bow is going to stay in there securely. It's not going anywhere. All right, at this point, I don't need these streamers anymore, but we could certainly leave those in there, tie a few little love knots in them, maybe put some rhinestone accents on them if we want to keep them in there. But for this corsage, I'm going to go ahead and just remove them. Come back over here to the satellite bracelet and do the same thing. Put my bow on there. Go ahead and tie my ribbons, streamers around the bow to secure it on there. All right, once I got it nice and tight, I'm just going to go ahead and cut those streamers right off. Don't need those anymore. So this is what we have at this point. If you want to go ahead and fluff out your bow a little bit, we can do that. Just make sure everything is pretty. That's actually probably going to be in the way because I don't need it that long. Make sure all my ends are nice and clean, crisp cut, and we don't have any ragged edges. All right. Okay, now we're going to take, oh, you know what, I didn't forget to mention one of the other products we'll be using for these projects, and this is actually one of our acrylic design chains. If you joined us earlier today, you saw me use the Tracy chain, and this happens to be Colleen, and it's a real dainty, almost like a leaf an ivy leaf or garland or so. It's just very dainty and pretty and very reflective on both sides. It does have a one side, actual side, and then the back side of it, but the back side is very well finished off. It's very shiny, so it doesn't matter if it gets twisted around. No matter how it lays or looks, it's always going to have a sparkly finish to it. But we're going to take a few lengths of that. I'm going to just move these up out of the way here for a second. And because we are going to be, she'll be wearing one up here and then also here, we just kind of want to take a little measurement. So I just kind of lay it up here high on my arm, and just so I know that I'm going to have enough, because you don't want it to be tight if she goes to reach out her hands or anything. So I usually put it in my hand right here. It's going to be longer than what I need it because it's going to be secured up here on her wrist, but that's going to give me that extra play. So once I have that, I just cut off a piece. Now I know that's about how much I want to go, that long. And I'm going to cut off another piece. And honestly, I've added 2 of the Colleen chain, and I've also used some of the Dazzle line chain, but you could certainly add as many garlands or streamers as you want to. It doesn't have to be just 2 or 4 or 3. You know, just have fun with it and get creative. This is a case when there's never too much. More is better. Okay, and then on our Dazzle line chain, we don't have quite as much as this. It comes a yard on in the package, so I'm just going to double it over and cut it with a pair of wire cutters here, and we're good to go on that. I'm going to come and get, this is just one of the packaging materials from one of our products. It's a hard plastic, and I keep some of the larger ones when I'm making projects because they make a good gluing platform, or if I have to glue something and, you know, gluing my petals in advance or gluing accents in advance, I don't necessarily want those on my design table and getting my design table all sticky and messed up, because I've got a big production day ahead of me when it comes to prom, so I want to try to keep my area as organized and clean as possible. But keeping something like this really helps keep me clean and organized. So I have these. I'm just going to move those aside, and I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to just pull up all my ribbons, hold them up, and I'm going to take my glue, and I'm going to apply, not a whole lot, but I'm going to make sure the entire disc has a coating of glue. It's not super thick, but it's entirely coated all the way around, if you can see that. I'm going to set that off to the side onto my little disc, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to make sure I'm going to pick up my little ribbons just to get them out of the way so that I can get in there with the nozzle from the glue and just give them a nice coating. I don't want it to be drippy runny, I just want it to be coated all the way around and out onto these little wings from the disc clip. I'm going to go ahead, and doing these in advance allows them to kind of sit up to get a little tacky, which is what we want. We've all been learning, if you've been joining us, that the tackier, the easier it is to work with it when it works with the glue. Now the important thing on this is, because it does divide, the disc clip is attached to either, however you want to look at it, the top or the bottom of the bracelet. In my case, I want the top to be seen, and because we're going to have cascading items coming down, if I were to do it this way, they would come over the top of that and that wouldn't be seen. So it's perceived value. I want them to get as much bling and decorative use out of what we're making as possible. So I split it apart, and my disc is going to be what I'm going to consider the bottom branch of the bracelet. You can see that it's going to be at the bottom, and this one's going to be at the top. And it's important that I know my direction because I'm going to have cascading chains from it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull back my ribbon, and I'm going to take the Dazzle line chain, and I want to get about 3 of the gemstones onto the disc in the glue. Now normally we would put it on, take it off, put it back on because we want that glue-to-glue adhesion. So I'm just going to go ahead and lift it up a little bit. I'm not going to actually remove it from the whole thing. I can just kind of lift it up in place, and then I'm going to push it down with my thumb to make sure it's stuck on there really well. Come back in with my second chain, do the same thing. I want to make sure I have at least 3 gems secured onto that disc so I know that it's got a good grip. Push it down, pull it up a little bit and push it right back down, and it's nicely adhere into that glue base that I have there. I did them in the center, and now I'm going to come back in with my Colleen chain, and these are a little bit larger, so I really only need 1 of the little filigrees to go into the glue. Put it in there, just kind of take it off a second and pull it back off, and then push it down on there. And now that's secured there. Do the same thing with the next one. Put it in, take it back off, put it back in, push, and now they're secured on there and they'll hang nicely. Go ahead and adjust my bow a little bit. That's phase 1. Now we're going to connect the 2 bracelets. And this is the tricky part because sometimes the chains get kind of tangled up, but just take a second, get yourself organized, untangle so that you can keep working. If you try to struggle through it and not get yourself organized, then you just get more frustrated. So it's better to go ahead and get yourself organized and untangled. Get rid of the ribbon, I don't need that. Okay. Here's my other bracelet. Now, thing to double check is when you put it on, the ultimate disc clip runs the same direction as your arm. It runs from fingertip to elbow. It doesn't flow over the wrist. It goes from fingertip to elbow. So it's important you know that when you're going to place the chain on here, what direction it's going so that it's comfortably worn. You don't want the chain getting tangled and accidentally putting it on this end or on the side where it's not going to, it might get caught in things that you're going to add in there or caught on something. So I just do a quick little double check, and I'm going to go ahead and add my rhinestone chain. I'm going to get it right up onto this disc, and I mean the actual plastic disc. I want to make sure it's up that far on there. Press it down in there real good. If I need to, pick it up to make sure I've got glue to glue, but I've got enough glue on there that by just pressing it down really tightly and securely, I've got a good adhesion there. Get it on there, push it down. If I feel I need, like right here, I don't think I have enough glue and I need to put one of my little medallions there, I'm going to just come back in, put a little more, a little glue gob here. Get it out of the way. Okay. Now I have this. I'm going to stick that in there. That's not quite as tacky, so I am going to pull it out, push it back in, come in with my next one, put it in there, pull it out, stick it back in. One more tap because I'd rather be safe than sorry. Now I know my chains. Now the 2 bracelets are connected and they're going to be securely connected. Okay, at this point it's really up to you if you want to work on the wrist one or the arm one first. In my case, I want to get some of the things out of the way, so I want to go ahead and take the delicious jewel that we have that's on a pin, and I'm actually going to use that pin. I'm not going to glue it in. You know, one of the things that's really important for you all to know about Fitz Design is that we are a keepsake company. Our items are meant to be kept and used again and create memories. And one way to do that is to use the mechanics we're supplying. So by using this pin and pinning this brooch into my corsage, I haven't ruined the brooch so that it can be taken out and worn again. And that's what's really important. It's a keepsake. And you should be selling your items that way. That adds value, not just perceived value, but actual tangible value to your designs, is that it's something that will last forever. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this, and I'm going to get up close here. I'm going to actually stick this right through that whole center. As you can see, I'm going right in here, and I got to take it down because I need to have the leverage that I can't have when I show it to you. But there we go. See how that's right up in there. There's the pin coming out there, and then I'm just going to go ahead and secure it into, sure I am, there we go. Make sure it's on there. Now that is nice and secure in there. If for whatever reason I didn't think it was secure enough in there, I could easily take a couple U-glue dashes or something and tuck them up underneath there and maybe secure it to a few of the other ribbon loops. But that's in there really well. It's not going anywhere. And once I get my flowers tucked in around that, it's going to be beautiful. Okay. All right, let's see. We're going to go ahead and start adding some flowers in. I like to do, when I create my corsages, I like to do them in layers so that we have a lot of dimension to our work. And I find that if I go back and forth and do too many different things, like I add a leaf and then add a flower, or add a accent and then add a flower, then add a leaf, and then add, I don't get the same dimension I do when I work in groupings and in layering. So I'm going to come in and get my flowers, and for this one we're using spray roses. And on your project list it said Alstroemeria. Now you notice I am using permanent botanicals in my pieces. One second here, and I do that for a reason. One, it's just easier in the process for the webinars, but also I'm creating my samples that I'm going to use in my prom display, and that way I've got, I've had fun while taking class, and I've also created my display piece all at the same time. So we're working efficiently and being productive. Okay, so if you joined us last week and you joined us for John Hozek's, he showed us a really great way to deconstruct an Alstroemeria. And basically you just take the whole flower and just kind of nestle it into your fingers, and then go ahead and cut off the petals right at the base. Now in this case, what he did in his, he actually put the glue on here and then glued it into his corsage base, but we want to use the petals as individual petals. We don't want it to be have the same form as a traditional Alstroemeria. We want to just add that texture and that color variation that is so common to the Alstroemeria throughout the entire corsage in little accent pieces. And Alstroemeria are such a great flower for doing that. They come in so many amazing colors, and they have those little freckles and those little stripes to them that really give them a lot of personality, and they hold up so well. So I've gone ahead and I have deconstructed one, and I'm going to go ahead and prep my petals in advance. And it's really important when you are deconstructing flowers and petals that you use the floral adhesive, the glue, on that entire edge of where you have cut it from its base, from its actual stem. We want to seal in that moisture. So it's really important that we make sure we have that glue on that entire cut. In one of our past webinars, we had somebody who asked, can I cut the petals to form and shape them, contour them, if it's too big or I want a different shape? And honestly, you shouldn't do that, because you can't then put the glue on it to seal it. So you're leaving a cut where moisture is going to escape and where a bruise is going to occur that will be seen in the corsage or the boutonniere or whatever, or the bouquet, whatever it is you're making. So we don't recommend that you contour petals of flowers. It's one thing if it's going to be stuck into the ribbon and into the base of the corsage where you can't see it, but it's another thing if it's going to be part of, this part of the petal out here where everyone's going to see it. We don't want to run the risk of damaging it. And flower petals, as hardy as they can be, they are delicate too. And so we don't want to take that risk. So I'm going to go ahead, as you see, I'm prepping all my petals in advance. For the one part of the corsage, I'm going to start back up here on the armband part, but I've got them all prepped. Doing that allows me to let them get a little tacky. And so I'm going to come back in here now, and I'm going to start placing them. And the glue that I had already put on the base here is also a little tacky still, so I don't have to do that insert pull out. I have glue there, I have glue here, and so I got a good good little source of tackiness right there, and I can just stick it right in there, push it down, and it's going to stay securely. And I'm just going to work my way around the corsage, kind of basing it with the petals. And you know, this really, it takes one blossom and it really extends the use of that one blossom. I'm really getting a lot of bang for my buck for one blossom here. You know, if I just had one Alstroemeria stuck in the middle, it would be pretty, but it wouldn't like fill up the entire corsage. This is doing just that for me. It's filling up that entire corsage. And I have some around the outside. Now I want to bring some in that kind of go up. Don't want everything to be flat. Okay, and now we have our petals. And honestly, that alone is very pretty and could also, you know, just be the corsage just like that. But this is, you know, selling the WoW, so we're going to add another dimension to that. And I'm going to come in with 3 of our Sweetheart Roses. I'm going to give a nice amount of glue. Again, if these were fresh, I would want to make sure I covered that cut, and you can just see I had one of those little accidents with my glue because it just had one of those little bubbles in there. That's okay. I've got a good amount of glue. I covered up that cut. I think it's time that I clean off my glue. Get that excess off so I can work more efficiently. A little trick here, and I shared this with our morning webinar. This is one of those makeup remover sheets that we use to clean our face to get all our makeup off, and it's a great way to have at your desk because it helps remove the glue from your finger. So if it bothers you like it bothers me to have all that glue, just have a little pack of these sitting by, and you can just take that out and clean off your fingers and get right back to work. Okay, a little glue on that, a little glue on this. Put it in, take it out, put it back in. Touch it in, touch it out, put it back in. Give it a little press. And now they're in there. Now I'm going to move back down to the next level. Do the same thing. Get all my flowers prepped. My petals, my flowers. Oh, excuse me. I hope none of you out there have gotten this cold or respiratory thing that's going around, but man, if you do, I feel your pain today. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to prep my roses too because I know that's what's going to follow the petals. And come back in and start putting them around. Again, remember I have glue on my base already, and there's glue on both sides of the petals, so by just going in and actually lightly pressing them down, they stay nicely already in place. I don't have to do that, touch and remove and touch again. We have our petals. I'm going to come back in with my roses. Now the roses I do have to insert and pull back out because they're not actually touching the base. They're actually going more into the ribbon. Okay, now I have my roses. Oh, just a few more things to add to this. I'm actually going to use 2 of the Infinity. I'm going to set one off to the side for my boutonniere that we're going to make to coordinate with this corsage here. And then I'm also going to grab my accent sprays. I'm going to get all of this ready to go so I can just start inserting it. And actually, I don't need the long stems, but you certainly could leave the stems on and make little curly cues out of them. They're a nice shiny finish, so if you wanted to, you could add another element by just curling them. But in my case, I want a little more clean look, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut them all off. And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of wind up the bottom there. You can see I just kind of wound that up. It just creates a little bit larger gluing base for me to add the glue to than if I just left the straight stem. I want to make sure I can get enough glue on there that it's going to stay in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these prepped up. Get them all. They come 6 in a pack. And you can add them all into your corsage if you have that kind of budget. You can split them up and add one into the boutonniere, several of them into the corsage, and then use the remaining into your accent piece. That's really up to you. The goal is when you're selling something is to sell by the full pack. That way you don't have one of these sitting around and then you end up with that shoebox full of onesies, twosies because you didn't sell all of them. Just go ahead and plan on, and that's another reason why you want to sell 3 items. It gives you the opportunity to use all the products that come in the package. Okay, let's get these glued up. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. And like I said, Dan or Ashley will interrupt and make sure your questions get presented. We want to make sure you're getting all of this, although I'm sure you are. I'm going to go ahead and start at the top here, and I'm going to just add them in random places around. Stick them in, pull them out, stick it back in. But I want to make sure that I'm not pushing them too far in. I want them to be seen. And that's one of the reasons I wait to add my accessories last after I've added flowers. Even if I'm going to add filler flowers, I wait until I've done that to add my accents. Because so often you add these items in the beginning or in the process excuse me, of adding your flowers, and then they get covered up. And we want to be able to see these things. We don't want them to be hidden. I'm so sorry. I promise I'm not going to die on you during the webinar. I won't do that. So I've got 3 in there. I have 3 left. I'm actually going to add 4 to the top, 2 to the bottom, reason I'm doing that is because I already have a big statement piece in here, so I want to bring a little more bling to the top bracelet. I put one more up into the center here. What I'm going to do with that is I'm actually going to hold it and I'm going to twist some of the gems so that they're facing both front and back. Because then when they come in the package, they are just facing one side, so I want to make sure they're facing both front and back. Now I can just set that aside, come back in, add these to my lower piece. I'm going to tuck it right in between the ribbon. Press it to make sure it gets, it touches in there and it's in there securely. Come back in.
Susie, while you're finishing that, I've got a couple of questions.
Awesome.
Both about artificials. So the first one is, if you have a customer that requested permanent botanicals, would you recommend cold glue or hot glue?
Cold glue.
Okay. And the next one is, can you share any experiences about selling permanent botanicals versus selling fresh?
Certainly I can, if I can stop coughing. I'm so sorry. I know that sounds horrible when it comes across your speakers. You know, there are still people who like to have the permanent botanicals. They want to take that keepsake to the next level, and certainly permanent botanicals does that. So it's good to have a selection of them available. There are certain companies that kind of specialize in smaller, petite flowers that you can use, because a lot of times we know that permanents have a tendency to be a little bit larger than life. So you want to search out and find a good source for your smaller blooms that you're able to use. And anymore, you can hardly tell them apart. But, you know, if you want to be able to offer that, then, of course, having samples and offering them in both fresh or permanent so that they can make the choice during the sales process. And maybe you want to handle it as when they come in, you ask that question. Were you thinking you would like your corsage made in permanent botanicals, or were you thinking fresh flowers? And that gets the conversation going, because I'll tell you, they don't know that they have an option. And it's up to you to let them know that they have that option. But as far as construction, there's really no difference in constructing a corsage with your permanents versus your fresh, other than you can be a little rougher and manhandle them. I mean, obviously they're not going to bruise or break apart, so you can actually work a little faster with them because you don't have to be so tender in their handling. So there's an advantage there. And the reason why I say use the cold glue is because I know I keep calling it glue, and I need to retrain myself. It is an adhesive, and the adhesive is meant to form a permanent bond. Glue is a temporary, it only holds things together. And we all know that the girls are dancing and they're having fun and they're not paying attention to what's happening with their corsages, and sometimes that pan glue, depending on the temperature, can release and pop off, and then you have a corsage that's falling apart. You will not have that problem if you use the cold adhesive. It is a permanent bond. If you get glue to glue, it is a permanent bond that can only be broken if you want it to be broken. You can tear the corsage apart, but you have to want to do it. It's not just going to fall out if you use the right amount of the adhesive. So that's really the only reason why I say is because I'd rather be safe than sorry, and I'm sure that corsage is not going to fall apart when she's out there dancing the night away.
Yeah, the other thing about permanence is there still are people that don't view fresh as a value because they die. And that can be young men, that can be young women, that can be the mother. I mean, quite honestly, I remember my first telephone conversation with the lady who's now my wife. Told her what I did for a living, and the first thing she said is, my last boyfriend bought me a dozen roses and all they did was die. So even though she started off on the wrong foot, still ended up marrying her. But there is that group of people that put a higher value on permanence because they're not going to die, they're not going to wilt. So having both offerings, I think, is a wise option for them. And as Suzie talks about often, and we've showed pictures, put together a great display that's made up of your permanents, and then they can try those on and get used to them. That also helps them know that they can buy those items in permanent or also get them made for them in fresh.
And there's a lot of girls out there that have allergies, and they can't have certain flowers. So having that option is really important, and I think it's a viable one. We become flower snobs, I think. We all ran that course with carnations where, Miss Martha said, no carnations, and then she started using them again, and now everybody loves them. I never stopped loving carnations. I think they're an amazing flower, but we become flower snobs, and we kind of went through that phase with permanent botanicals as well, where, oh my gosh, you can't have anything but fresh. Well, you know what? We're designers, and our job is to make whatever the customer needs or wants beautiful. And if that's what they want, then let's give it to them, and let's give it to them the best and the most wow we possibly can. Okay, you can tell I just went back in and added those infinity, 2 of them just in the center. Again, because this has such a large statement piece to it, I want to bring a little bit more bling to the top piece. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a few of the rose leaves in, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and cut them.
Okay, while you're doing that, I've got 2 more questions.
Okay.
I'm going to answer part of one of them.
Okay.
The first question is there an appropriate way to talk about the difference between artificial or permanents? And then one of the things we haven't talked about that I want to add in here is there's absolutely nothing wrong with using them both together. There are some flowers, and you do this with silk corsage leaves if you're using that as a base. There are plenty of flowers that you can look at using permanents and add in your fresh to go with them at the same time. But so the question to you, Suzie, is do you think there's a different way of presenting them? And the last part of that is, should they make sure to tell them that they are using permanents? Personally, I would say absolutely. There should be no surprises. But I'll let you answer those, and then I've got one more.
Well, honestly, if you want to include permanents in your repertoire, in your offerings, then like I had mentioned before, when you start the conversation, you should be asking that immediately. Are you thinking you want us to create this in fresh, or would you like us to create this in permanents? That lets them know that they have an option, and it lets them know. Now, if you're going to just do that and not tell them, you are going to be in for trouble. You know that. They don't like surprises. They don't know what to expect. So it's up to us to make sure they do know what they're expecting upon pickup. So you definitely have to tell them. You cannot spring that on them and make it your decision. Now, I know from a production standpoint, you can start working on your prom corsages now and have things done. That's the great thing about permanent botanicals. However, you can't just do that on your own. You need to make that an offering and make that their choice. And I think Dan's right. Mixing the flowers, the fresh flowers, with the permanent botanicals is perfectly acceptable, and in many cases, a good idea. One of the flowers that's coming back into vogue that we're going to see a lot of, thanks to the royal wedding that took place a few years ago, is lily of the valley. And you know what? We all know that is a very delicate and hard flower and expensive flower to get. But there is some beautiful lily of the valley and permanent botanicals on the market, and there's no reason why you can't make that as part of your offerings. And you just sell it that way. You tell them what you're doing, and what's really important is you have to believe in it yourself. If somebody comes and says to you, "Hey, I want silks," and you're not a big fan of silks, I'm going to do something real quick here. Somebody comes to you and says, "I want silks," and you go, "Oh, okay. they're going to immediately think they're doing something wrong. But if they say, I would love permanent botanicals or I would love silk flowers, and you go, okay, we can create something beautiful for that. If you have that attitude of acceptance and a positive feedback, ultimately you're going to create something beautiful. You're creative, you're talented, you have great ideas. It's not going to be ugly no matter what you do. But your facial expressions, your body expressions, all that is important. If you look at them in a negative, then a frown when they ask you something, they're not going to be encouraged and they're not going to have confidence that you can do what they need or what they want. So put a smile on your face and say, absolutely, we can do that and we'd love to do it. It'll be beautiful for you.
Yeah, it's similar to if you go to a restaurant and they tell you what the special is and you ask, what do you think of it? And I go, it's okay, nobody buys it. So that a follow-up question here is, what about pricing differences? I think the question comes from Mary. Mary, I think the key thing is to make sure you're following your pricing formulas as a base, whatever your markup is on fresh and your supplies and your labor. Make sure you're following those formulas. Suzie, I don't know if you have a comment on that question about what about pricing difference between fresh and permanents.
No, there's really no difference. The pricing difference is the same as the difference between a carnation corsage and a rose corsage. It's what your product cost you. It's about making sure that you account for everything that you put into your corsages and boutonnieres, and whatever you need to charge, that's what you charge. So I don't think there's really no difference, and you shouldn't just automatically say if you want it in silk or if you want it in fresh, it's two different prices. You can't just say that without knowing really what your costs involved are, and you might be surprised. It may be a little bit more similar than you think. So there we have it. We have our, well, let me pull you back up here. We have our corsage. Oops, I'm sorry.
Put it on.
Oh, sure. I knew you'd say that. I don't know if I can. I'm a little klutzy.
Well, if you can.
I'm a little klutzy here.
So one of the questions that came in while you were working on that was, folks are always asking about price, and we really don't comment on that because we don't know your overhead, your price of flowers, all those types of things, so we really can't comment on pricing. However, the comment was they didn't feel like they could sell many of those in their area because it's a more blue-collar area. But I think one of the things as we messaged back and forth is that she's going to have an event, a prom party, and might show something like that that might end up with some type of a modification.
Absolutely.
Maybe they don't take the shoulder piece and the wrist piece, but maybe they take the upper arm piece by itself as something that's different. Got to be careful that we're showing the talent and the skill and the materials we have to work with to help inspire them about what types of things you can do for them, and that how you are much different than the other florists in your area. So I don't think price is always the challenge, especially when you're doing an event, an open house, or a prom party, as it is to have it out there to make sure that they know the types of creative things you can do. The distance between the upper arm and the wrist doesn't have to be as big. It could be more of just below the shoulder. It could be a wrist over the hand type piece. The concept can be used in a lot of different ways.
And you know what's important, we hear this no matter what design show we go to, at least I always remember hearing it, is that if you don't show it, they don't know that you can make it. And the consumers are very wise shoppers these days, much wiser than they were when I had my flower shop back in the 90s. Honestly, they know their business, and they can tell something that is more elaborate. They anticipate it to cost more. But if you're not showing it and they don't see it, then they're never going to have the inspiration to want to wear it. And you might just generate sales that you didn't normally get because you were, as we all do, get stuck in a rut of just selling the corsage itself, or not trying to relocate it to the upper arm, or, like Dan said, casticating down the hand. If we don't inspire our customers, then they're not going to be inspired to want to buy from us. So It really does help to have samples of these things that you never thought in your world that you could ever sell. And you know what? If you sell one of them this year, you have sold more than you've ever sold before. So you're ahead of the game. Next year you might sell 2. The next year you might sell 10. You got to start somewhere.
Well, there's a special request, and I'll give you the special request, and then I'll tell the story while you're doing it. The special request comes from Amy. Could you hold it up again so I can get a picture of it?
Oh,
Can you
okay.
put it back on?
Oh, put it back
While,
on.
while she's doing that, let me tell you a story from just a couple of years ago. Darla Pollock is a very well-known designer. She's on the Teleflora design team and has a shop in Saginaw, Michigan. During the recession, very few areas were hurt worse than Michigan, and Saginaw is the headquarters of, or the founding areas of General Motors, and it was hit very, very badly. And in our signature corsages, and here in Selling the WoW, we talk about being sure to create and offer the more expensive type things. So Darla made a $69 corsage and put it out. She made it in permanent. She put it out on her display. She knew she wasn't going to sell any, but she wanted to be able to show what her skill level is. And Darla is a great, great designer, so she has a fabulous skill level. And so she was telling me, and she said, Dan, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this, but I actually sold 3 of them. And then I had one person bring it to me and say, can you make this nicer for me? And it ended up being a $99 piece, so she added another $30 to it. And one of the things I messaged back and forth with Brandy is, don't forget that there are a few wealthy girls in your market area. The doctor's daughters, the lawyer's daughters, the entrepreneur's daughters, the banker's daughters. There are a few of those people who are looking for that holy smokes creative piece. And then if it is one that's outside of your normal price range, look at a tip that we talk about, and we can visit again about it a little later, is, by the way, she said thank you, Susie, is what we call signature corsages, but giving them names. So this would be a great one that if you don't think you can sell it regularly in your market, give it a name, across the ocean or over the river or upstairs, downstairs, or flow with me, or some type of a name that makes it very creative. And when you can tell that that girl is looking to spend more money, you take her to this piece and say, here, let me show you this. Nobody else is going to have anything else like this. This is just for you, and you're going to love it. As Susie pointed out, if you only sell one, that's one more than you planned on. If it grows into 2, 3, or 4, as you develop a reputation for having great-looking prom pieces, you'll find that folks drive across town from other towns to come to your stores to see the cool and great unique ideas that you have.
Okay, all right.
If you've got other questions, send them along.
Yes, please, please. They're great questions. Thank you for asking them. Now we're going to do a coordinating boutonniere. And you know what? Boutonnieres have bling too. Don't just think, okay, it's going on a teenage guy. They're not going to want that. I'll tell you, they like to dress up. They like to really stand out and show off their styles. Don't be afraid to have a few of the over-the-top, blinged-out boutonnieres for them. And this one that we're going to create today is made by using one of our bouquet wraps. This is our Athens bouquet wrap. It's actually meant to go around the handle of a bridal bouquet. But you know what? When we're creating product lines, we really look at things, and Dan makes us look at it and say, okay, what else can we use it for? If it can only be used for that one thing, it's going to have a hard time making it into our line. Everything that we have, it can be used in multiple ways. So don't get stopped by whatever we call it. If we call it a wrap or a chain, chances are it has many, many, many different uses, and that's one of the reasons we're having these webinars, so you can see just how diverse all our products are. somehow your boutonniere has to stay on the guy, so we have a great line of magnets. This one we're going to actually use one of our magic magnets, which is green, and it's got the 2 pieces. And then we're going to use the leftover infinity, and I'm actually, I went ahead and did it before. I removed it from the stem because we just need the actual orb. And we're going to use a few of the leftover rose leaves that I had. So I'm going to go ahead and lower my screen, and so you can follow along. Again, here's the boutonniere. This is what the back looks like. I have a couple pieces of number 9 satin ribbon. That's going to create the backing. Now, it doesn't mean you have to back it. You could easily use some of our magnetisms, which is just a round magnet, and place them on strategic locations. That would also secure it. But in this case, I just wanted a solid background and an accent color, and this I just kind of chose. It's kind of a creamy, almost a blush color. It has a little pink tint to it since we're going with the pink. So taking my wrap, and all our wraps come with these little hooks on each end. They actually come with 2 pins, and that helps you secure it into the bouquet a decorative way, rhinestone tip, but we don't need those for this, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut those right off, get them out of my way. And then once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it upside down onto my little gluing surface here, and I'm going to go ahead and take the glue and carefully, and this does take a little practice. I'm not going to say that every once in a while that little air bubble doesn't get too much of it out, so actually I have one of the pins left from the infinity that I didn't use. Poke it down in there to get my glue flowing again. And I'm not going to turn it completely. I'm going to kind of do it on an angle and just run it across. If I get too much, I'll come back and remove some because it's starting to come out really heavy. Gravity's just pulling it right out. But I want to make sure the entire back is coated. Now, you can, depending on what it is, you can use the glue dashes to do this. But again, you got to cut them, and it will take a lot more time to cut them and put them because you want a solid connection between the ribbon and this backing. I don't want there to be anything loose. I want it to be solid and secure because it helps make this a little more sturdy. It's not quite as flimsy. And so if I use the dashes, just a little bit harder to do that to make sure that everything is covered. So now that I have all that covered, if I have any glue, like down in here I have some glue that's a little bit too much, I'm just going to go in there and pull it out so I get those strings out of the way. Another reason why we keep our leftover stuff, you never know when you're going to need just a little sharp object. You could do that with the tip of your knife if you wanted to, but the stem of my infinity is perfect for that. I don't have any glue right there, so I'm going to go back in there and add just a little dollop of glue into that. Now that I've got all my glue where I need it to be, just going to make sure my fingers are not sticky. Come back in with my ribbon and cover half. Press it down. Now it does create a seam, but once you start putting all your flowers and accessories on there, you don't see the seam. You don't notice it. So that's okay that you're going to have the seam, but I'm going to go ahead and pat that down, turn it over. Pat it down. If I have a little bit too much glue, I can always come back in, just kind of take that out. so that I'm not too messy. But it really is the best way. I've tried it using the glue dashes, and I'll tell you, you don't get that flat surface like you do when it's when you use the glue. So now that that's stuck on there, I'm going to come back and I'm going to turn it over again, and I'm going to apply the glue to my magic magnets. Again, from the very top all the way down. And I'm going to find out where my center is, and I'm going to put that right down the center, making sure it's straight, because if it's not straight, then it will wear crooked. Press that down. And by then, this has started to set, so I can come back in, and I'm going to just cut around it as close to it as I possibly can. It does help to have a really sharp pair of scissors. I obviously use these for something I wasn't supposed to, so they have a little nick in them. It gives me a little it's not making them cut as nicely as it should. Just some patience, and it will be done. Now it's cut. It has a nice backing. Now, you could, depending on the, what the girl's dress is, you could use a royal blue, a purple, black, whatever you need to give you that little shine through of color. It will come right through and shine through the rhinestone and make a really pretty effect. And if you have to, you can go back in with your shears and just make sure it's nice and trimmed. Now that we have that done, we're going to come in and we're going to use a little piece of Italian ruscus. Now earlier I said with flowers that you can't contour and cut the leaf or shape it, or the petal or shape it, and you really can't with flowers, but you can with foliage, because it's not going to bruise the same. Some will, like an ivy leaf might, but a ruscus is a pretty hardy, and so if it's a little bit too big, I just come back in here and I can cut it down to whatever size I want. But quite honestly, a whole stem of Italian ruscus, you're going to have all your different sizes and shapes you need, but in this case it was artificial, so I needed to trim it just a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of place everything where I want it first before I start building it. So that's about right. And come in, put a little glue on here. I'm going to put that up there just like I did before. I put that up there so it'll get tacky. And I've got my glue on my back of my rose. And then I'm going to use just a couple petals of Alstroemeria to add another texture and another color element to it. Now, you say, but you didn't use the whole blossom. I know I didn't. But this is, when we make our boutonnieres in this fashion, it allows us a great opportunity to use up those damaged florets. You always get that one on a stem that is missing 2 or 3 of its petals, and it's not beautiful enough to put into one of your designs. But if we deconstruct it, we can certainly use the 2 or 3 good petals that are left. There's nothing wrong with them. There's no blemishes, no bruises on them. So we can certainly use those, utilize those, not throw them away like we had to before, put them into our boutonnieres. So, that's if you've ever wondered why you go through and make this type of boutonniere that you're seeing the trend becoming where it's just bits and pieces, that's a good reason why to do it right there. Okay, put that down, pull it out, put it back down in, and then I'm going to come back in with my petals. I'm going to tuck those behind the rose. I'm going to put it down in, pull it back out, push it in, and just make sure I kind of press it down so that I know it's touching. Same with that. Okay, I'm going to take my infinity, and the infinity where I removed it from the stem, it has just a little platform, a little bare spot where there's no gem, and that's exactly where I'm going to put my glue, puddle it up in there, and then that is going to go right into the center of the rose. I want to bring that bling that's behind it forward. I don't want it to just be flat. Again, we're talking about dimension, so we want to do things in layers. And to add one more layer, we have sparkle here, we have sparkle here, so I'm going to add one more layer of sparkle by going in and cutting off the last little piece of this leftover rose leaf that I had. Remember, it started with this, and I cut this off and used it in the corsage, and I left the two pieces. So I'm going to go ahead. And these are great because they're really pliable, and I'm just going to give that a little curve to it, just a little bend, so it's not so flat. Put a little glue on both sides of it, and I'm going to tuck that right in front of the Alstroemeria petal, but behind the rose. Just tucked it right in there. Press it down to make sure. And then come back in with the other. Again, that's just the layering of it. Helps add that dimension. Put it right into here. Touch it in there, pull it out, touch it back. And so we have shiny, shiny, shiny at every level. We've used a blossom that we would otherwise have to throw away because it didn't have enough of its good petals to put in our vase design, but we could certainly take the two remaining petals and add it into our boutonniere with our little spray rose and the leftover pieces from our corsage and make a boutonniere that is certain to get heads turning at the prom. Any questions about that? Okay. Well, I do have some other things I'd like to show you. Just a little quick show and tell before we move on here. I'm going to kind of go through these really quickly. They have kind of, I just want to show you some other options. Selling the WoW is about upgrading your offerings, and always, we really encourage you, if you don't always do it, to have it become standard practice to sell 3 items. Do the corsage, the boutonniere, and something else. And that something else can be as simple as a floral ring. Again, that's selling the WoW right there. Just by adding that third element especially if it's not something you do, that's a WoW element right there. Just by adding a third element will help you and get that WoW factor going. And here we just have some infinity plus. We have a little bit of the Dazzle Line chain, one of our sparklers, and again, it's the broken down Alstroemeria petals on our floral ring base. So that would be a fun. This item was actually one of the projects that we had in our Floral Jewelry 1 class. So if you're interested in learning how to create this design, you can go to our YouTube and watch the Floral Jewelry 1 class, and you'll be able to see how to construct that. Another item that is kind of accompanies that is the floral necklace, and it's made with the same Alstroemeria, so it would be a coordinating piece if you wanted to. But here we've just deconstructed the Alstroemeria. It's on our floral necklace. It has our design disc, some of the Dazzle Line chain. It's got a couple of our little Edelweiss Kara's Kisses that help add a little more dazzle to the chains that are the kind of the chandelier effect. But that's another item that would be the third item that you could add after your corsage, would be a necklace. Earlier, if you joined us, we showed scepters. We actually built a scepter, but the scepter could be a third item, something to carry. I think that's another great way to add definitely a lot of WoW, is to have something that is carried. And this one here, you know what, Dan, I can't remember what the name of this scepter is. So he'll let us know that in a minute, I'm sure. But we've just done a composite
Aurora.
rose. It's what?
Is it Aurora? Is it the crown?
It's the crown,
Yeah, Aurora.
Aurora. And we've added some of our flutters into a composite rose. We've got some of our flowing willow foliage here in the center of the rose. Again, adding those layers to just add that wow factor into your prom offerings is really going to go a long way into increasing your prom sales. And you know what? We've got to be there. We work really hard. Prom is a holiday. It's not just another order. It's not just another day. It is a full-blown floral holiday. You have to plan and prepare for it. So you might as well make it worth your while and start offering some of these great, wow, fun designs so that you can take prom to the next level in your flower shop. I hope you enjoyed our hands-on section today for selling the wow. The marketing session coming up is going to be a little different than what we've done. It's going to be fun because we actually get to hear from you and hear what's going on with you and have your questions answered and share ideas. We always learn as much from you as you do from us. So we're just really glad that you're joining us. We hope you continue to join us. Next Tuesday, I believe, is weddings. Our morning session is weddings, and our afternoon session is Top It Off, which is going to be hair pieces. So I hope if you haven't signed up for that, you'll do so right now and get that taken care of, because we'd love to have you come back. And again, thank you very much, and I'm going to turn over the webinar to Dan.
Any last questions for Suzie before she heads to the doctor? Okay, Suzie, thank you very much. I appreciate all the extra effort getting this done today.
Okay, have a good webinar. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay. As Suzie said, the marketing session today is a little different. Normally, you get a marketing presentation from me about a number of different topics, but one of the things we know is that the ideas we get come from you guys, and the best ideas are the ones that we get and hear from you. The other thing I've learned over the years is if it's us sharing them, we get viewed to be as pushy salespeople, but if it's you sharing them, it's one friend helping another. So what we'd like to do this afternoon is we'd like for you to share what are the ideas, the strategies, the concepts, and the things that work for you that are just your go-to things, the ones that help grow and build your prom business and keep it solid, and share those ideas with us. On your board, you'll see that there's a place to raise your hand. If you'll raise your hand as we get to you, Ashley will unmute your microphone, share your concept. You'll also see that Ashley's going to be doing a PowerPoint and typing in these ideas as we go along. And she actually has, we're going to do a short poll, and then right after that I'm going to share some of the results from the same poll that we did on this morning's session. So Ashley, if you'll pop up the poll for us for a couple of minutes here, and then pop up that screen for me, and we'll start talking about this. So what we're looking for is, what are your thoughts about the upcoming prom season? Are you expecting a large increase, a small increase? Are you expecting it to be the same as last year? Are you expecting a slight decrease, or are you expecting a very large decrease? We understand that you're trying to look in your crystal ball, but if you're making your goals and plans, are you making your goals and plans based off of which one of these 5 positions that you might be in the marketplace? Okay, Ashley, if you'll pop up the slide from this morning's poll, I'd appreciate it. So here's a look at the same poll that we did this morning. These are the answers that folks came back to us. There's a typo on here, Ashley. 18% of the people said, and if you've seen my writing, you'll know why there's a typo on here. She's trying to translate my awful writing. 18% of the people who answered the poll said that there would be a strong increase, that they're projecting a strong increase in their prom business. 43% of them said that there would be a slight increase. So we're at 61% are expecting an increase, and then 39% said the same as last year. Actually, at 0% had suggested any decrease at all, a slight decrease or a strong decrease. So we'll add your numbers from the poll, and we'll put these together, and we'll share these with you so you have an idea of what people are thinking about and planning for as far as this upcoming prom season. Ashley, there's a lady who is first, and I want to say it is Brandy.
My name is Brandy.
Okay. Brandy shared with me during the webinar that one of her strengths is actually selling to the men, to the young men. So I've asked Brandy to share a little bit with us about that, if you'll unmute Brandy. And Brandy, tell us what kind of strategies or how does it make it work for you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Mostly it's just, they come in with the girl. A lot of the guys don't come in knowing what color, so they usually bring the girl in and they have this first, initial time. And the girls are very modest. They don't want to have him spend more than they think is necessary. But then I get these guys that they really want to do those things, and so I will, recommend, if they want to think about it, and then I will tell him, come back in. And so, and in this area, we really don't do a whole lot of fancy wristlets. We're in a very small town, limited budget, so majority of the time, I really try to push the keepsake bracelets, things like that, just because, that way it's something to surprise her, because she's not expecting him to come in and upgrade, her thing. And generally, the young man is definitely trying to impress, but at the same time not trying to, it's a really hard thing to do, but the wristlet in our area, because we are such a small town, seems to be the best way to get them to upgrade. As far as the products that she was making earlier are beautiful, amazing, but as far as, in our area, and even to the younger girls, I feel like they, there are that one to two that will come in and, spend the money on something like that, but a lot of them feel the tradition is out the window. You don't typically see the guy come in and order her corsage, and then she comes in and orders the boutonniere. A lot of the times they come in together as a couple, and so it's kind of one of these things that's, it's hit and miss depending on who you're talking to. So, but I definitely, most of the younger men that are trying to be, impressive, I recommend the keepsake wristlet, and that seems to be working. So
Great. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yes.
Who else has got some ideas they want to share with us? Don't be shy. If you'll either raise your hand or type in it into the question part, we'll make sure to recognize you. Okay, Amy. Sorry, Amy, I won't even try your last name. I'll butcher it. But if you'll share, Amy says, as long as she has a WoW item in the cooler that they can hold, it helps them sell better. Ashley, if you'll unmute Amy. Amy, share with us a little bit more about that. Give us some examples of what you're calling a WoW item you'll have in your cooler. Okay, Amy, you're on. Amy Harbig, I guess it is. Amy, you're unmuted. If you'll share some more about that with us, please. Well, we're not getting anything from her. Maybe her volume or her audio is not working. Okay, who else has ideas to share with us?
We did have a raised hand from Sarah Carver.
Okay.
She is unmuted.
What we like to do is we like to do coupon kind of idea, so we kind of encourage the guy and the girl to come in together, so that way when they order it, they kind of coordinate, because we get, especially in our town, we have a lot of those, grocery store people that try to sell their corsages and encourage them to go there instead of us. So we like to encourage them to come to us together, so that way, that they have a coordinating corsage, and that instead of one looking like it's from the grocery store, and then one looking, wow, from a florist. So we like to do that, and then when we do that, they seem to spend more because they think they're getting the discount from that coupon.
So give us an example of the coupon.
What we do is we typically will pass it out to like the high schoolers, and it will be 10% off, your corsage order when you order your boutonniere and corsage together.
And how do you get these passed out at the high school?
We actually, a lot of times we have connections with the principals and stuff, and we'll actually go to the schools, and ask them. We've tried doing, fashion shows like, doing in the school, connecting with the dress shops, and we have a lot of connections with a local dress shop, which we would also pass them out at the dress shops, some of the tanning places and stuff like that, just so that it gets the word out, just not just in the schools, but the first place they go, because everybody wants to start with a dress.
So it's not just the high school. You're passing these coupons out everywhere you can think of to get them out to.
Exactly.
And then for these other places, like the dress shops and the tanning salons, are they giving you coupons back to be able to give out?
It depends. Sometimes, like the bridal shop, like I said, we're not typically the first stop for girls. Typically they come to us after that. But we do have cards for those companies that if they give them to us, we can definitely pass them out for them, for like the tuxedo places, the tanning places and stuff like that.
And where is your store located, Sarah?
We are in Sylvania, Ohio, so we're, again, not the biggest town, but it's outside of Toledo, I guess.
Yep, very blue-collar
yeah.
farmer area.
Yes.
Yes, very much blue-collar, heart of the Midwest. We were in Ohio for quite a few years, so I'm familiar with it. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Who else has some more ideas to share with us? Great ideas, Sarah. Appreciate that. Now, I know if we were all sitting in the same room around a bunch of tables, there wouldn't be a whole bunch of quiet.
Okay, we have Julie Werr, who has something to say.
Okay, fire away, Julie. Tell us.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. And you today?
Amazingly. So I just with the previous person, I am doing the same thing. I'm in a town of 1,200. I believe there's 150 K through 12 in our school. And I am really trying to pursue them from going out of town to get prom. So in March, there's an early start or a late start for school. So I've handed out, there's posters all over town, and there's an invitation for everyone up at the school. And I'm doing breakfast, and it's from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And there's donuts and fruit and juice and milk and everything like that. And if they bring in their invitation and they order and pay that day, they get 10% off.
Oh, great. I love the breakfast idea. I haven't heard that one before. Great idea. And so that's a Saturday?
No, that's actually, it's on a Wednesday morning when there's a late start for school.
Ah, okay, I see.
So that way, hopefully, my thought is they're going to come in with their girlfriends, and, if one does it, well, then you're going to want to do something a little more, and then they're going to want to do something a little more. This is going to sound bad, but maybe not have the mamas there so much.
Well, I think we all agree on that. But let me address the moms, because there is an understanding when the mother comes in, especially when she says that she wants her daughter to have the same corsage she had. she really isn't saying she wants her to have exactly the same corsage, but what she is saying is, I want her corsage to be just as special as mine was. The only thing she knows how to refer to it is what it looked like the one she had, because it was so memorable that 20, 30 years later she can still remember it. And really that's what she's saying is, it's got to be fantastic, just like mine was.
And what I'm getting more is the mom is, you want to start singing the Frozen song, Let It Go, and she wants it to match exactly to the color of the dress, and it's got to look exactly like her dress, and the boutonniere has to be exactly, and it's more what the mom's design is. So thinking outside of the box of what the girl might want for a little more creativity is diminished, at least in this conservative area.
No, that's the case, I think, in a lot of places, and that's really where your corsage board of things made up really help the mom and the daughter to have a conversation where the daughter's going, ooh, I really like this, and it'll help pull mom out of her box some. So, no, we hear that comment lots of times.
And your webinars have been so inspiring to do the boards. I never thought of doing that, so thank you for doing this and giving me that inspiration.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. That's what we try and do, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who else has some more ideas for us? These are great. I love that breakfast idea.
We have Janet Carrero.
Fire away, Janet. What ideas do you have to share today? Ashley, is she unmuted? I'm not seeing her on here.
She is unmuted.
Okay, Janet, one more try. I feel like the talk show host on the radio. Going once, going twice. Okay, Janet, let's see if we can get you back, but let's see if we've got someone else who's got something to share now.
Okay. We have no one at this current time.
Okay. Well, let me share a couple of ideas before we end here, things that we've shared on some other webinars, but ideas that have come from florists. One of them that I like is to have the youngest girl in your store be your designated prom salesperson. The energy, the language, the discussion that two young girls have between each other creates a higher value, a lot more excitement, and makes your shop a fun place for them to come and purchase things from. So, and what I tell folks, and you can look at my picture, if I'm the youngest person in your store, go get somebody else. But that's an idea that has that works very well. I've got a message here. Mary has some ideas. Mary Maines, let's unmute Mary and Mary share with us a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mary.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Not at all.
I had trouble getting on, so I just kind of re-clicked it. And I offer a discount when there's a boutonniere and corsage sold together. I sell it as a unit. And so with that, and as well as with ordering early, of course, this has been mentioned, and I'm also a very small town. And I really stress that it's designed for you if you want a designer, one of a kind. And they tend to buy on that. And I tell them, and I do go to many workshops, and so I tell them if they want something that's on the cutting edge, is something I use, as well as stopping in for a fitting once they've chosen it. Let them come down several times and try it on, and let them have a little part of it. I know it takes a little time, but they love to, and they usually bring friends. And if those friends haven't bought, they see, or if they hadn't been in yet, it gives them the ability for that, as well as when they, even the first time, and really encouraging them to put it on and try on all these different ones, because then they get the ownership and it becomes theirs. And so also texting them and sending them a photo if it's okay with them, texting them a text with an X, yeah. Because then they can send that same text on to their friends saying, oh, mine is ready. And so that, and also having a prom night. And then I also put it to them two ways. Do you want something that's kind of wild and funky, or do you want something that's kind of subdued and sophisticated? And
Sure.
those two things, you know, it tells you something right away. And as far as that mother who always wants the match with colors, I try real often to have something the same color that's a solid piece, and take and just show them and remind them, well, you spent all this money on this dress. Now, if you want this to kind of wash and fade out, and show them what happens when you hold it up in front of the exact same color that you don't see it as well, take something else and hold it up there that makes it pop. You know, it's what you want, because I want what you want. But what do you think? And that's some of the things that I do.
Your store located, Mary?
In Freeman. Oh,
Freeman.
South Dakota. Where else? Home of the Rushmore, Mount Rushmore.
Ah, okay.
If you
Great
haven't-
ideas. Thank you very much. So on your coupon, I asked the question earlier, when you're doing a coupon or providing a discount when they buy the set, what discount are you giving?
What kind of a discount?
Yep. Is it a
About-
percentage or a certain amount of dollars?
You know, I have been doing a certain amount of dollars, but I think I'm going to change it over to a discount after listening to your webinar today. Maybe a 10%, because the more they buy, the bigger, you know, and still it's all compatible.
Sure.
As well. I like that idea. That's one of my best takeaways from today's.
Oh,
Many.
great.
I
Well,
love
thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Who else has got some more ideas to share with us?
We have no one at this time.
Okay, let me let me share a couple more here that have come in from some others. One of the things, and I think we kind of hear a little bit about that today, is getting the girls involved in the process. We really recommend putting out what we call a bling buffet. Take all of your bracelets, all of your bling, all of your accessories, all of your ribbon, get them out from underneath the counter, out of the back room, and set up a beautiful display that shows them all of the things that they can choose from. And then let them get involved in what they're picking. One of the things we learned a long time ago is with a bling buffet, you can even give them directions. So on the bracelet section, you could put up a sign that says pick one here. Under the accessories, you could put a sign that says pick two here, or pick three here, or pick a number here. Most of the time, they're going to pick that number. If not, they're going to pick a few less. But by putting an instruction there, they're more likely to do it. Then depending on how much extra ribbon you've got in your shop, or if you're a ribbon lover like Susie, when it got to the ribbon section, you might put 5 here. But you give them a plant liner or a container or something to begin to put all of their pieces together. Then they bring it to you. They've been involved in the process. They begin to see it come together. And then if you start to talk to them about the price, one of the things we found is if the price is above their budget, and you then turn to them and say, okay, what would you like to take out? They're less likely to take something out because they created it than if it is that you put it together and they think maybe that you're trying to oversell them. So there's plenty of other opportunities there by making sure that you get them involved in the process. And what you're looking for down the road is informed consumers, so that when they do call back and they want to order something for Mother's Day or they want to order something for a friend, that they understand how the process works, and they may even begin to use some of the correct words, and that's really going to help you fulfill their dream and make sure that their orders are taken care of even better. Ashley, we got any more before I go on? Okay, let's see.
Yes, Randy would like to say something.
Okay.
Hi. So you had just said something about using like a plant, like a plastic thing. What we do here at our shop, and that we just did this last year for prom, is we actually had them pick the corsage box and the boutonniere box, and they assembled everything kind of themselves in the box. And then, so what actually happened is we were able to put all of the stuff and the boxes with the order all together, so then that way when it came time for me to work on it, I was able to pull, okay, here's the box with everything that's supposed to go with this individual set, okay, it's all done in the box, in the cooler, done. It made things a lot faster, and then, everything stays together, and then they see that it's going to be presented well, they have our stickers on it, but it saves a lot of time, so just something we do.
Great idea. So let me throw a question out to the group, because this is a question we get often. What do you do in your store to make your packaging of their corsages and boutonnieres more creative, more special, more colorful? What types of things do you use? If you raise your hand, we'll recognize you, throw in an idea there, or if you want to type it in the question section, we'll be happy to share it from there. But what kinds of things do you do to make your packaging of your corsages and boutonnieres more creative than just a plain cardboard box or a plain clear box, clamshell box? Have any comments there, Ashley?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, let me go on and throw in a couple more ideas here. One of the ones that we like to talk about is using the prom magazines. And as a basic rule, what we like when the girl comes in, have the prom magazines there. Ask them to show you the color of their dress, and then also ask them to show you their dress. Our rule is corsages start at 15% of the price of the dress, and that's proven to be a very successful way to help people raise their sales. We know that the diamond industry has created a rule that says the engagement ring should be 3 months of a man's salary. If they can create a rule that works for them, we've created a rule that works for us, and that's 15% of the price of the dress as a starting point. And then Mary commented on her packaging. She uses ribbons and small petals rolled into roses. Okay, what other ideas? Sarah mentions they have a special sticker with their logo on it.
Wendy Herrick would like to say something.
I'm sorry?
Wendy Herrick.
No. Wendy, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Okay, well, we're waiting to see if we can hear Wendy. Let me share. Colored shred, opalescent shred at the bottom of the box to keep it from rolling around. I've used a shiny cake round wrapped with cello for larger corsages. Great idea. I love that. Stickers, pretty stickers that go on to their tags. Uploading them to Facebook. Got one I don't understand. Amy, can you... Ashley, can you unmute Amy Harbig and tell me the cardboard that goes under the cake?
She is unmuted.
Amy, what does that mean? What do you do with the cardboard that goes under the cake?
In her comments, she says, I'm not sure if her computer has a mic.
Ah, okay. Looks like she's wrapping it in ribbon and brightly colored papers to put all that together. Yep, her computer doesn't have a microphone. I see that now. Wrapping the boxes in ribbon, so they're not just plain white boxes, but they add a lot of color to them. Great ideas. Thank you for sharing. What other ideas do you have? Let me do a couple more while we're waiting on these. One of the things that we hear often is that they wait for the boutonniere to be ordered, and you've heard here today the number of people saying about getting the corsage and the boutonniere ordered together at the same time. One we talked a little bit about earlier today, signature corsages. Make 3 or 4 really, really fancy, beautiful corsages that are very, very expensive, and give them very creative names that create an image that go with them. And so when those girls come in that you can tell have a good deal of money to be able to spend, that have a high budget, take them by the hand, take them over there and show them the kinds of things that Susie's been showing you, and John Hosick showed you, the extra fancy, beautiful, super wow kinds of things. Take a photo of the set on a mirror with a low light image and then attach that photo as a thank you. Great. That'd also be a great cover for a thank you card, to send them handwritten thank you card. Business card, tissue and business cards, brightly wrapped candy. That's a cool idea. And when it's a beautiful box, everybody likes to keep that box. And one of the things we know is that prom corsages are kept. So with beautiful packaging, as Wendy points out, they've got a place to keep it, a special place that helps bring those memories. If that same special pretty box has got the name of your store on it, it's going to help reinforce that it came from you. And Sandra, I really like this idea about taking a picture on the mirror with the low light and attaching it as a thank you. I think that's a beautiful picture, a great idea, and certainly shows a lot of personalization, that it's about them, and it's not just being muted over and over. Sarah has one here. Last year, Ann Jordan shared about getting colorful Chinese food takeout containers and using that for their corsages and boutonnieres, and the kids love that look, the color, that Chinese food container. Ann is on our team and comes up with great ideas. This is another one. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for sharing. Okay, what other ideas of things that you use in your store that you'd like to share with folks that are successful? Well, this has been a great webinar. It's been a great day. Suzie has weathered through it, and I appreciate her extra effort on that. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for sharing. We love learning from you. We get our best ideas from you. As Suzie mentioned, next week, the morning session is called Wonderful Weddings, and Susie's our designer again. The marketing will be about wedding marketing. And then the afternoon session is going to be what we call Top It Off, and it's about hair designs. So as we keep talking about selling those 3 things, this will be one that's entirely about hair ideas and different hair designs and styles. Thank you for attending. Share these ideas. Share the webinars with your friends. We have capacity up to 1,000 people. I really want to see us get to 1,000. Thank you very much for attending. Thanks for sharing. Everybody have a great afternoon. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week.